So guys, I am Dr. Sanjay from Central Maharashtra, and I am co-founder of Homeopathy for Humanity with Tikva. And today's session is just actually casual, but to tell the importance of symptoms and how these aphorisms, the aphorism number 5, aphorism number 6, and aphorism number 153 help homeopath to understand track of chronic disease. So there are a lot of things when you consider about uh, case taking or understanding chronic disease. It's not a fraction or a small point, but it overall issue you need to understand about the symptoms, right? So I will hand over to Tikva to continue further. There you go, Tikva.
Okay, well, I thought you wanted to start with the meaning of the word dynamic.
Yeah.
Okay, so dynamic is a force of motion. It's an energetic force that brings things back into balance, that brings things back into equilibrium. And there's an interesting root of the word called a dyne, D-Y-N-E. And that's a unit of force that imparts an acceleration, and that's used in science. So dynamics has to do with motion.
Right. So how homeopathy is connected with this word? What Hahnemann has an idea to relate homeopathy with dynamic?
Well, when we have a disease state, we have the vital force is creating symptoms that we need to learn. That is the language of disease. We have to read the language of disease, which is produced by the vital force in a dynamic way, because it like presses. And then you have to find the corresponding most similar medicine that presses back, but harder. And then that way we finish the disease.
I'll add something to that, because I think that the disease is also dynamic, right?
Exactly. So here makes the difference between to understanding of this word dynamic. We have
a unit of force.
Yeah, it's related to the force, or it related to ability of substance to affect the other thing. Like the medicines are dynamic, which is affecting the force in the body. Like these disease agents, we call it any noxious agents, disease producing factor, also have ability to affect to the body. So dynamic is related to activity. It's related to influence the activity. So
Motion.
what is motion, right?
Power. Dynamis means power. These are all Greek roots.
Yeah.
Physical power. I think, right?
One might assume so, because a dyne is a unit of force that imparts an acceleration. So we might assume so.
Yeah.
The word itself show that dynamic can be related to physical things, and it can be related to energy. But homeopathy actually it's not that energy thing. What is the word for that? Tikva?
Which
Can
energy
you,
thing?
can you repeat that, Sanjay? I didn't understand. What was the question?
Actually, Hahnemann not related homeopathy as a spiritual thing,
He didn't.
because it can be on the borderline, because the medicines or disease producing agents are not energies. Why they are not energies? Madhu, I have explained you this. Can you tell me?
So what? Why the disease producing
No.
is not?
Why homeopathy is not the energy medicines?
So I'll start from beginning that dynamics is like which has the power to change, to make the effect, right? And it can be the force and it can be the energy also, like dynamical force and dynamical energy. So
Yeah.
the diseases are you are talking about the medicines, right?
Hmm.
So the medicines
Atom,
are done. Hanji. So in the
atom theory.
okay. So what sir explained is that in the crude state, like if we take the example of Nux vomica, in the crude state, it has some formations of atom. I mean, the atoms are placed in some particular formation, right? And this is a crude state and it is poisonous. But when we potentize it, when we activate it, so this initial stage, this arrangement of atom, this is not lost and it is some way altered. I mean, it has been loosened. The atoms are vibrating at different frequency, and this frequencies or this change in the formation of the arrangement of the atom, this is representing the potency. Like at 30 potency, they are vibrating at different. I mean, at different frequency.
Frequency.
At 200 potency, they are vibrating at different potency. This is
Are we
where
sure about that? I mean,
mean,
because when we're
it is one of the
creating
stories.
something, you can't break it up. I mean, we don't have a, what's it called? We don't have a nuclear reactor kind of thing where we're
Yeah.
breaking
Right.
atoms and we're
No,
not
we are not
splitting
breaking.
atoms. The
No.
atoms are still whole. The whole thing
Yes.
has to be
That's
whole
why.
because we don't
Yes.
have the ability to manipulate the structure.
Yes.
Something has to
Exactly.
happen.
Yes, the
Exactly.
initial state, the initial arrangement is still there, but there is some kind of changes made because of the potentization. That's what I'm
But are
saying.
we sure that the changes don't happen in the milk sugar? It could be it happens there.
I mean, this is still a theory. I mean, I am still understanding of what is all this
Okay.
happening.
I will explain. Okay. Basic, we need to understand the structure of atom. In the
Let
central
me say
part,
something.
okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Teacher Sanjay ji, shall I say something?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, the first point is what did Hahnemann actually meant by saying the homeopathy? All these things that are the vital force and also the theory of the dynamicity, it came later on. It is not a part of a homeopathy. It is just like
Exactly.
explaining the things that why are these things happening, right? So we should not confound it with that of the homeopathy. And also,
Right.
if we go for the
I'm not
atomic
understanding.
theory and so on,
I apologize. I'm
Yeah.
not sure what I'm not following you. What's not part of homeopathy? I think maybe your voice is cut out or my ears are no good, but I didn't understand you. Can you just say
Okay,
that?
I can tell you what he said. He said that in the beginning of homeopathy, that Hahnemann was using small quantities of material substances.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that gives us the principle of similars, that like cures like.
Right.
And so that fundamental thing is very important. And we could really discuss how in the world we get a dynamic potency out of, scraping and, and
Right.
then dumping and shaking, for hours or days, as it may be. But the most important thing is that the similars, the law of similars. Is that what you were trying to get at, Nitesh?
Yeah, see, the first point is we don't have any form of the references that why did Niemann had told that we have to give the 100 strokes, and after that he came to 10, and after that he came to 2. Basically, we don't have the reason for that. Also, the second thing, we don't have the reason why he gave the alcohol or else the sugar of milk. It was just his experimentation, and the important thing was that he also meant to convey to the public that what is going on in them. That is the most important. The reason being the Renaissance from there. It was a period of the Renaissance in the France, and where the people came out with the things that no, we have to see that what are the reasons, what are the causes. So basically, the thing is that we have to know that what exactly the homeopathy is. Homeopathy is not going to say anything just like vital force. Because if homeopathy has a vital force, then we should not go ahead and tell it as a vital principle. What I mean to say is the basic thing of a homeopathy is completely different, and the topics of potentization along with that of the vital force and the dynamicity theory, they are completely different.
Yeah, actually, potentization or dynamization theory came far later. Far later. Earlier, there was only a principle, law of similar, and to treat the patient with the similar drug.
Yeah, like the
Okay.
famous case in the Materia Medica Pura about giving the drop of bryonia to the woman who was sick and then going and checking on her later and her saying, well, I wasn't going to come back. I'm fine now and I can't lose my time off work. Therefore, don't worry about it. It works.
It works.
Yeah, just one thing more.
Okay.
Yeah, hello. I hope I am audible.
Yeah, some echo is coming. I don't know from where.
Yeah, there's a slight echo, but we're okay.
Okay.
Is everybody's mics are off? Only speaker mic should be on.
But Marilyn's very quiet, so we don't need to worry
Yeah.
about her.
Yeah.
Faisal's very quiet.
Yeah. The basic thing is that the Hahnemann did not live long at a place during his time of practice, right?
Okay.
And Niemann had not lived a long time at a place during his practice. And the most important reason were the apothecaries of that time. Actually, they had a law that if at all the physician is there, he can only prescribe, but then he cannot dispense his own drugs.
Yeah,
Right.
we have some kind of weird law like that here too.
Yeah, and that is the reason that a Hahnemann had to shift from at least one place to the next.
Right.
And if you take this point in some other way, I am just going to say in the form of the record, because I don't have a proof. I only think about it. Okay.
Okay.
That basically, if the person is always changing his place from one place to another, and the reason being he cannot dispense his own drugs, and when he found out that if at all we go on reducing the drugs, at least we can reduce the aggravations, right?
Right. Reducing the aggravations, very, very important.
Yeah. And now, just when we come to this, both the points, at least we can see that Hahnemann might have thought that if at all I have to be in one place and I have to practice, that I can take the drugs to at least such a level that they cannot find the drug in it.
That's a very interesting thought.
Basically, the thing is that if at all the person comes and he is going to tell him that why are you going to dispense the drugs, he can say that I don't dispense the drug, you prove it, it is the drug.
And back in like 1830, that would be really impossible. They have a hard time doing that now.
Yes, of course, yes, but then at least Hahnemann might have thought so. And
Yes.
basically the reason is, if at all he has thought so, and he came out with the concept of the potentization, which he named potentization. Actually, the thing is that he named it potentization. I don't know whatever it was. And I too hope that neither he knew what it was. That is the reason he kept on changing the things. And
Interesting theory.
yeah. And this is what that I feel that this is a form of a blunder by Hahnemann. You understand it in this way, that if at all he made such a things, and only he was the person who gave us the concept of the homeopathy, and only he was the person, he gave each and everything in homeopathy. So it can be taken as a form of a blunder, because the other person can not come and tell anything. That is the reason the progress of the science has stopped. If at all we see a science, which means a person will be coming and he will be adding up his own things. But then in the homeopathy, the things were not there.
Maybe the science is not that much advanced to detect the medicine in higher potencies.
See, I tell you one thing very frankly, science may be advanced, science may not be advanced. The topic is not that. But the reason is, what all science we knew, we have to know that what is going on.
But there are so many things which need to be researched. And that is one of the points which,
Of course, yes, I don't deny. But the thing is that, just if we see the history of the medicine, at least we come to a period of the dark ages. We have to know that why had the Hahnemann did all these things. See, what the important thing is, the homeopathy that we learn today, that we read and know today, it is the mixture of homeopathy, that is the basic concept, and also it has got the personality of Hahnemann. Unless and until we remove the personality of a Hahnemann, at least we can't come to the conclusion what homeopathy is. Let me give you one example. We are coming to aphorism number 2. That is highest ideal of cure, right? Now, just tell me that who the physician can say that, yes, I will cure this patient? Of course, none. We cannot say that I will cure the patient unless and until I treat him and he gets cured. The important reason being, whatever drug we are giving, it is in the form of medicine, right? But then when the drug is already going to cure the patient, then we can call that drug as the remedy. We cannot call a drug as the remedy before prescription, right? So the most important thing is, when we see the will of Dr. Hahnemann at the age of the 81, at that moment he told that if at all I have one more issue from Lene's womb, at least the child will be getting all these things. Now the important aspect is, you just think one thing, that how can a person at the age of 80 or 81 make such a will? Of course, one person may say that he was too rich, for that reason he made a will. Yes, fine, he was rich, no doubt about it. But the thing is that what made him to write that if at all I have a next issue, then the child should get all these substances just at the age of 80. So what I mean to say here is, personality of Dr. Hahnemann was like he was too much ambitious. And that is the reason he gave it as the highest ideal of cure. if at all he has given the ideal of cure, then why in the form of the chronic diseases, he told that all the diseases cannot be cured? So at least you have to know that what is the personality of Dr. Hahnemann, which has an impact on his writing. And that is the problem that we are facing nowadays. So supposing I am telling this thing, the person may come and say, you are speaking against homeopathy. This is not right. I am not speaking against homeopathy. What I mean to say is science is completely different. And that of the personality of Dr. Hahnemann, which is upon this science, is completely different. When he himself says that what is going on in the interior of the human organism cannot be known, and he told it as like that is the theoretic the medicine in aphorism number 1 footnote 1, right? And it is also mentioned in the introductory portion of the Organon. Now the reason is, if it cannot be known, that what made him to give the explanation? One person in one book cannot write both the things. The reason being, he gave the explanation just to satisfy the quenching minds of the people of that time. But those explanation and those terms, what he meant, it may be correct and it may not be correct. These are just explanation. But the things that he saw, but the things that he has seen and that he has felt, of course, those things are correct. And if we go for only those things, then only we will come to know that what exactly homeopathy is. This is what I mean to say. If we go on link the dynamicity, of course, we cannot prove it up. At least we cannot say that, yes, this is the dynamicity and I can prove it up. No. So if at all we cannot prove it up, so at least what I feel is that at least I shall go for those things in which I can do something and I can prove it up. At least the generation which is yet to come, they knew that what I mean to say. The problem in the homeopathy is we don't want to leave our track. Of course, it is a good thing. If it is correct, you have to be there. But the thing is that it is going to halt you from the progress.
What do you think the
Yeah.
track of homeopath?
See, the track of the homeopathy, as far as the my little knowledge is concerned, it is the firstly about the law of similia. Once if we come to the law of the similia, after that all the things came. Now all the things which were added up.
That was actually before 1800. In 17 late 90s or early 90s you are talking about.
Yeah.
And
Okay, so if we're working on the premise that homeopathy works and it's effective and it's efficient and we know it works, then we could just go ahead with our work.
No, see, the important thing is, if at all we wish to praise only those persons who are the scientific minded person, whom we call the so-called scientific minded person, then the important thing is that I am not a scientist. If at all I come out with a theory, the person who is in the science, and then he will be saying, no, you are wrong.
But
The
if
problem
scientist-
nowadays is, if at all I had cured a patient of the diabetes, and I say that I have cured diabetes, the other person is there to say, this was not a diabetes, this was hyperglycemia. That is the problem. If the same patient with the same reports comes to him, then he will also say it is diabetes. But if I cure it, then he says it was not diabetes. The problem is actually during the time of the Hahnemann himself, as we know that he was not so much a social. The personality of Hahnemann was not social. And the reason being, while at the age of the 70 years, while he went to the University of the Leipzig just to give the lectures, students were not there. Initially, the classes was full, but then at last, he was left with only 5 or 6 students. So just you think that what was the personality of Hahnemann? He was not social at that time. He meant to change the field in which he had no friends. if at all suppose I want to change someone, I should have a rapport with him so that I can talk to him. And the same thing we are going to continue still now. At least I have seen the physicians, just if at all they come to know that the patient has taken any of the antibiotics and so on, they simply come and they thrash the patient off. I don't understand why. According to me, interest of the patient is above all. Even Dr. Hahnemann had told to use the antipathy in cases where there is a imminent death. So if at all when he can say that you can leave your track for the interest of the patient, why can't we?
Well,
We
we
have to
can,
accept
because
it.
that is in the procedures, that when there is a danger to life, you can call the EMT and they can
Yeah.
take their paddles and they can zap people in the chest. That's fine. We just clean up the mess when it's done. That's not
Yes,
the
of course.
issue here.
Yes, of course. But then the people, they won't understand at times. And at least there are numerous such type of people. So
Yeah, but we can't concern ourselves with all the people with all their opinions all of the time. We just
course.
can't. I mean,
course.
you know,
So, yeah, of course. So the main thing is, when I am not a scientist, if at all I came out with a theory, the scientific world is not going to do anything. But then if I pick up a scientist, I make a friendship with him and I make him work for homeopathy, then they will understand.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Like the theory of dynamization is just a theory. But if we involve, like my husband is a scientist and he is willing to work on it in future time. He says this is like on the quantum level. I talk with him about the dynamic thing. What is dynamic and what is vital force and what is this and what is that. And I told him, can you do something about it? And he works on simulations. You understand what is simulation? I mean, they make the structures in the computer in the form of mathematical equations. Like they have to show what is gel, what is the atomic, arrangement of the gel. So they will make something like mathematical equations. They will run on supercomputers and they will show on the laptop, like on the computer, that this is the form. Like, so they can do it in the crude form. This is happening in like 6s potency. This is happening, and in 200 potency, this can be happen. So this is what I am thinking in the future. Like if something can be simulated on the laptop, if the scientists are saying this is happening in the medicine, then it is a very good discovery.
See, I don't mean to tell that.
Can I just add to what Dr. Madhu is saying?
Yeah,
Because
of course.
I have met Dr. Rajendran here personally in Bangalore.
Yes, I know Dr. E.S. Rajendran.
Yes, yes, he is
Dr. E.S.
Rajendran. He has already worked on this dynamization and he has proven that the structure of natrum at the potency level of 30 is something which he has worked on it and he has shown the structure. Similarly, he has worked on natrum 200. Similarly, he has worked on natrum at 1M and he has proven that the structures are there. That means even if we say that a material dose is not there, but it does have a structure. So that is the dynamization research which is happening now. And Dr. Rajendran has written a very nice book called Nucleus.
Dynamics, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
I have the book. It's called Dynamic of something.
You have the book, Marilyn?
Hold on 1 second. We'll go grab
Let's look at the cover so we know what it
I
is.
have Nucleus. It's written by Dr. Rajendran.
Okay.
And he has proven it in the Silver Jubilee Conference and the first international conference of homeopathy at Bangalore. He has presented his papers, the scientific evidence of the materials that are present at 30, at 200 and at 1M.
Great.
So it is not a placebo, again we can say, and we know that there is a structure even at 1M.
Yes.
See, what the thing is, actually, he did his PhD on that subject, and that is the PhD thesis that you are speaking about. He has written a book on it, and it was around 4 years back, I suppose. 4 years back. 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 4 ye
Yes,
right.
yes, it is about some time ago.
Yeah,
Nanodynamics.
Nanodynamics, there it is.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, thank you, Marilyn.
Okay, excuse me. I stopped. Actually, I was just wanted to say that homeopathy is not spiritual. The only to tell this thing, the word dynamic was used to understand how scientifically did the word actually homeopathy use this word in homeopathy. Honeyman, right?
May I say something?
So, yeah, sure.
So the idea of the spiritual came with Kent and his followers, and that's still with the homeopathic community, the idea of the spiritual being part of homeopathy, because Kent's teaching is so prevalent even today that that's how the spiritual came into it, right? It wasn't
Right,
with him. Yeah.
right. So,
Sorry, I'm adding to you. Sorry.
yeah. So we are supposed to understand uh, from aphorism number 5. Can you continue, Tikva?
Well, yeah, so in aphorism 4, we look at the person's lifestyle and we remove whatever might be a cause of their illness. And then in aphorism 5, we learn who our patient is. You know, this is where you do your intake form and you find out their history, their living conditions, what their lives are like, how they eat, you know, all the different basic things that we want to know to get to know our patient and who they are.
Yeah.
So it's who is the patient. And then
Marlene,
yes,
Marlene was studying about some organ, and if she has anything to say about aphorism number 5.
Second. So I have, together with aphorism number 5, to study it with aphorism 208.
Okay.
So 1 second, because 208 is already in the chronic miasms. And it's a reiteration of aphorism number 5. He talks again about the same kind of things, right?
Yeah.
What he should look at, including his motive, thought, and emotions. And that's important in 20. Sorry, I'm putting aphorism 5 together with aphorism 208. And interestingly enough, it says here, in the same way, his mode of thought and emotion should be considered to determine whether it hinders treatment and to determine whether it should be psychologically guided, fostered, or modified. Which then brings us into the spiritual, of course.
also lifestyle changes and also whether or not somebody needs therapy.
Right, rather than homeopathy.
Or a combination thereof.
Yeah, yeah.
For better effect, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And then in aphorism 6, we're looking at the changed disease state.
One more thing before we go on to aphorism number 6. Again, I will pull back on the 5 that the important thing actually when we track the disease, not exactly disease, but the lifespan of the patient, the sickness of the person, which continues from since he has birth to now. Okay, so every person is constituted mentally, physically on his own. His body is separate, individualized. So his body will function according to his own makeup. His thoughts are working around his surroundings, his knowledge, right? So whatever disease he is having, she will be popping up on and off with its acute form. That what Hahnemann says in aphorism number 5. The information, especially the exciting cause of the acute disease. Exciting cause of every acute disease, whenever the patient is suffering or infecting acutely, suffering with acute complaint, this information will guide physician to track the fundamental cause. And fundamental cause is due to a chronic miasm. So while tracking this fundamental cause, certain things we need as homeopath need to investigate, and that he mentioned that physical constitution of the patient, moral
Like
and
whether or not your patient is thin or plump or
yeah,
light or dark, these things can factor into a prescription.
then his moral and intellectual character, his occupation, his mode of life and habits.
Yeah, like let's say if somebody has an occupation where they're inhaling brick dust all day long, that might not be a chronic disease in the true form. That might be
Yeah.
more like a poisoning.
Then his social and domestic relationships. All these factors are very important. His sexual function. Everything should be taken into consideration. Right.
Yep, that's where we
And
get to know who our
that,
patient is.
yeah. Now, when we understand, we need to understand what disease we are about to treat, what we are treating. We need to understand the disease. So concept of homeopathy, the disease, a chronic disease, what Hahnemann told, is not just the person who is just sick from long time. Even allopathy also has the word chronic disease, which is more than a month or 2 months. The patient is suffering from more than a month or two. They consider as chronic disease. So is the same? Hahnemann has given the definition in one aphorism. Anybody remembers that? Which one? Where he defines
Aphorism number 72.
Yeah, 72.
right. Aphorism number 72. How he begins to explain that aphorism. A disease with such a character, small, often imperceptible beginning, dynamically deranging the living organism in each of his own particular peculiar way. Can you anybody read, Madhu? Do you have? Tikva?
72?
72?
Yes. From starting? With respect to the
No, from chronic disease. Means these are diseases of such a character that.
the disease, they are diseases of such a character that with small, often imperceptible beginnings, dynamically derange the living organism, each in its own peculiar manner, and cause it gradually to deviate from the healthy condition in such a way that the automatic life energy called vital force, whose office is to preserve the health, only opposes to them at the commencement and during their progress imperfect, unsuitable, useless resistance, but is unable of itself to extinguish them, but must helplessly suffer them to spread and itself to be even more and more abnormally delayed until at length the organism is destroyed. These are called chronic diseases. They are caused by infection with a chronic miasm.
Right. So here we notice that these diseases are those diseases which beginning usually is imperceptible. Even patient will not able to understand when he has started the complaint, right? So we need to understand then when this start means this is actually the change happen in his healthy state, right? That is what Hahnemann talks about the change in the function and sensation. And actually dynamic, the word I wanted to use because everything Hahnemann talks about functions and sensation of the body. Influence, everything influence this thing, and that only we as a homeopath able to collect the symptom from the patient, this function and sensation of the patients.
Because
And
that is the language of disease.
right. And so he talks in aphorism number 6, right, Tikva? You continue now.
I didn't bring up anything for reading,
Okay.
but
Okay.
yeah, it's about the change
I
totality.
will just I
Okay.
will just guide. If anybody can continue with, they can. Okay. In aphorism number 6, he told actually two things which are very much important. One is he talks about the physician character, that is unprejudiced observer. And second thing is a portrait of disease. The important factor in this aphorism is only two things, and most important is portrait of disease. He want to tell us about the understand the disease. Huh? So he start with physician's character, how he should be. He should not take any notes from his experiences. Actually, what usually I teach my student or talk to homeopath, like you should have your brain as empty slate. It should be empty while taking the case. You are doctor and you need to forget that you are doctor. You are physician. You have to forget. You just have to take the information as it is, like a photograph. How photography is working, you know that actually it is focused on one thing, but it captures everything, every surrounding object, major object, minor things, everything it catches. If you are focused on only one thing, like today's modern days cameras, they focus that center thing and everything is blur. Not like that. You should take everything as it is, a print on your head. If the patient is telling you this thing is yellow, then it's yellow. I don't have to correct him, right?
No, you want to see where he's going to go with that.
Yeah, where he is going there. Exactly. So here Hahnemann talks about using the word unprejudiced observer. Don't use your head, don't have prejudiced ideas, notion in your head while analyzing the case, and look at the symptom. What we have to look, very important thing here told. look at those sensation functions which are changed from healthy state to a disease state or any abnormal state, right?
Yeah, the
Change
change
thing.
symptoms are very, very important, the changes that have happened.
Changes from healthy state of body, mind, and emotion. It's not only a physical symptoms. If physically, anatomically, physiologically, we should not perceive the function of the body. If we should not have those sensations unless they are very strong. But when we are sick, we have those experiences. We experience our senses. We experience change in our state of working of body. We can hear our heart. We feel our heartbeat. We feel our nerves. These are changed things. And even in the mind, when you are taking mental symptoms, you have to consider only the change symptom and not his behavior.
Not his basic
Unless and
personality.
unless and until the patient somebody able to notice that what here the Hahnemann says. Tikva, do you want to continue this aphorism number if you have any information about 6? Hello? Hi. Hello?
Yeah,
If you I say if you want to say anything, you can
oh, me,
continue.
you're talking to me?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know you were talking to me. Okay, so aphorism 5 and 6 work together. It's like the gateway of the disease state. You know, make sure that there's nothing that needs to be removed, nothing that needs to be changed in the environment, the diet, the lifestyle, and then you can compare the normal state to the disease state, and then that's like our entry point where we then go to, you mentioned aphorism 153, where we want to use, the unusual and characteristic symptoms in order to try to base our prescription and match the best medicine to the disease symptoms using whatever we can find that's unusual and characteristic. And to make something characteristic, you need things like modalities, sensations, modalities of time, the area involved, when it started. There's a whole list of things, in your case taking that you need, because you can't just say, well, somebody has a headache. You need to qualify, you need to quantify, you need to know what that headache is, where it comes from, when it comes from, what's been eaten before the headache started, on and on and on. If it's the right side, if it's the left side, if it helps to go to sleep, if it helps to vomit, all these things are very important to make a characteristic symptom.
Okay.
Anybody want to talk about characteristics?
1 minute. Marlene
Well,
have gone.
I just posted something on the chat, and it keeps
That's
me
good.
remembering when I'm taking a consult to always smile. So
That's good.
if a patient doesn't go deep enough with any kind of symptom and I need to urge them to talk about it a little bit more, I remember to smile. So sensation, get the modalities, get how intense it is. And I think intensity is something that is so important, because if it's happening all the time, it may be a mild symptom, but if it's recurrent occurring almost daily or periodically, then I take it quite importantly because it is affecting the patient's life, how strong it is, when it comes, if it is infrequent, how severe it is, the location, if that's consistent, and of course, when it started. So etiology is really important. So keep smiling.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Okay. So you have completed aphorism 153 also.
Well, not really. We just started talking about making things,
Okay.
getting the characteristics out of the symptoms so that we can then find a corresponding medicine to that symptom.
Exactly.
I have a
Because,
question.
okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry. Actually, we learned that when there is a transition from healthy state to disease state, we take those symptoms. But consider example, if a patient is suffering from 20 years and he was very, aggressive, violent, irritable, but since 20 years, there was insomnia and this patient is now calmed down, he suppressed his emotion. But suddenly, since 4 or 5 years, this irritability, aggression has come back. So, what are the symptoms we need to take? Like the calm ones, the irritable ones, because in the healthy state, he was very irritable and violent. But in the disease state, he was calmed down, he was suppressed. But again, now there is a change and he is irritable and aggressive.
Is that during treatment you're mentioning?
No, it's just the course of the disease. Just
Okay.
like
Well, I like to just stick with the current state and keep other things in the background of my mind.
okay.
But then I just unplugged my speaker. Excuse me.
In aphorism 6, he already mentioned all these signs and symptoms which are change. All these perceptible signs represent the disease in its whole extent, and together they form the truth and only conceivable portrait of disease. Means that's what
Yeah.
we need to understand.
Right, we can't make things up. We can't postulate that this might be this or that might be that. We have to just take
Yeah.
our facts.
We need to
And-
take the facts. And one more thing, when he talks about chronic disease, infection, it's not like that only once in a lifespan the patient is going to have an infection. Every time he is encountering the infection, he is going to suffer with that. And every new episode of infection will make disease more complex, right? So whatever Madhu talked about, we might not know how was the patient 20 years back, but probably those people who are surrounding him might able to notice these changes in his lifetime, where how he has changed, how he has developed. Probably patient also might not able to tell what exactly, because in his definition we have seen these are imperceptible changes happening. Patient will change day by day at very minute level. So suddenly if you see any change due to present state is always important. But we cannot take his regular behavior as a symptom. But we can take how he handles things in disease state and when he is not having symptom. In pain, for example, and when he is not having pain.
Yeah, Yar talks about asking people how they feel on their better days and their worst days and making 2 categories there.
That's how you can collect those symptoms, right? Now you can continue, Tikva.
With what?
You can continue with anything. Sky is open.
Okay, the sky's too open. Okay, guys, sky's too open. Okay, so I'll just start with just reiterating that we need to learn the language of disease. And that's very, very important because otherwise we might just like, you know, get stuck in all kinds of just theories and supposing this and that and whatever. We just really want to go at the concrete facts, where they stand now, looking back at the past and keeping that in our mind, but looking at the facts as they are now. And this is a, you know, obviously, especially 100% for an acute disease. You know, if somebody has coronavirus, you treat that. You don't worry about how they were feeling, you know, 3 years ago. You're just going to treat what's current, right, guys? And so you have to learn the language of disease. And language of disease are signs and symptoms.
Right.
Symptoms are what the patient tells us that they feel, that they notice, that their experience. And a sign is something that we see. And these things are also very, very important. You know, to read a sign gives us information. And the patient in the disease state will give off signs. And that those signs can be their coloring. It could be the smell that they give off. It can be the way they move. It can be, you know, you can notice when somebody's irritable, even when they're trying not to be irritable, you know, you can read that underlying thing and notice that. So the language of disease is something that we need to become specialists in so that we don't miss subtle cues from the signs, because those can be sometimes the most characteristic things in a case. And the characteristic symptoms can happen in any sphere. Characteristics are very, very important. They can just clinch our case, and they can be with any part of the body or mind or anything. I mean, like, you know, I'll tell you a funny story about characteristic. Okay, so I was, you know, how we have Corona going, right, guys? We all know about Corona, right? And so I was taking a case, and, you know, we see our Corona cases on the internet, or actually, you know, just on our phone, whatever, right? And so I was talking to a family, they all had Corona, and I say to the woman, okay, let's check you. After I checked her, you know, I talked to her husband because he was having trouble breathing, etc. So I wanted to make sure I got to him first. Then I'm like, okay, let's see, how are you doing? And so I'm like, I need to see your eyes. And then she's like, well, okay. And she like starts talking to me into the phone. And I'm like, okay, your eyes. And so she's like, oh no, I've just been using marijuana. And I'm like, okay, well, all right, because I was gonna give her gelsemium because her eyes were like all like half shut, you know what I'm saying? And but she's like, no, I had some marijuana to help myself feel better. And I'm like, okay. And then so during my analysis, I ended up giving her pulsatilla, but she didn't improve. And so I'm like, okay, so we have a problem here. Those stoned eyes were not just stoned eyes. Those were bryonia eyes. And then she got bryonia the next day, and she, you know, she got well within a couple days. So we have to know little things like that and not make those little mistakes.
Tikva, can you tell us more about bryonia eyes? I'm not.
Oh, I'm
I
sorry,
don't-
gelsemium, sorry.
Oh.
Yeah, thank you for clearing that up. Gelsemium, you know, the half closed, heavy eyes,
right,
the
okay.
hurt behind them. Yeah, but see, that was
Okay.
a little mistake there with the patient that had been using marijuana to feel better, because those stoned eyes were not just stoned eyes, those were also gelsemium eyes. Just a little side note there of observation. So yeah, learning that language of disease. We have to be on our toes all the time.
Okay. Shall we continue with what is said in aphorism number 153?
And then we're getting pretty late. We don't want to keep people too late because then they won't want to come back for more.
Yeah.
Okay.
What it is said in aphorism number 153?
Yeah, no general symptoms. You need to qualify those general things. And what? And yeah, and more, and blah. You know, keep going. Get that information. If there is anything that you need to use. Okay, sorry, Sanjay.
Okay. In search for homeopathic specific remedy, comparison of collective symptom of natural disease with list of symptom in known medicine. Hence, we need to compare symptom of natural disease with whatever list of medicine you have. It's not just you have one remedy in mind and you guide that patient and frame him.
That's not going to work.
That's not going to work.
Mhm.
If you have while studying chronic disease, you will come to know that Hahnemann ruled out that homeopathy is lacking medicine those cure all the homeopathy is lacking in having number of medicines. Some people has criticized homeopathy because it lacks in medicine. They cannot have sufficient medicines to treat the patient or diseases of mankind, whole mankind, right? So he ruled out that because if you look at the total number of symptoms each medicine, during his time there was only 99 to 100 remedies, and he said okay, that was sufficient to treat all the diseases of mankind. And now look at the list of remedy homeopathy has. Nitish, do you know how many remedies homeopathy has now?
It is more than 4,500.
Exactly, or more. I think it's around 7 to 8,000. Small, major, minor. But Hahnemann says those 100 remedies were sufficient to treat all diseases of the mankind, right? But you should see one now if you calculate the symptoms just at present period, a polychrest have more than 10,000 symptoms, right? And if you have 100 such remedies, look at the range of symptom you are having. So there will be many and many thousands and millions of probability and disease types that can be treated with those remedies, only 100 remedies. So what we need is more striking symptoms, singular, specifics, uncommon symptoms, peculiar characteristics symptom.
Or symptoms that are together in an interesting way. For example, like with veratrum, if somebody has vomiting and diarrhea at the same time, we might want to think of arsenicum and veratrum. But then if they have cold sweat, then we're going to go, okay, veratrum. So you have an
Right.
interesting arrangement there that creates a picture.
And one more thing I would like to ask in last session during Madhu's class. Actually, I already tell them these uncommon symptoms. How you could relate or understand uncommon symptoms according to the principle of homeopathy.
I think that's for you guys.
Anybody? Probably, I think might be Madhu or Karina would able to tell.
Yeah, I'm waiting.
Oh, okay. Actually,
Uncommon symptom.
uncommon symptom. Right. Okay, I'll give the example of the coal. Like if
Yeah.
there's a burning coal, and if you put it in the hand, for sure the hand will, I mean, the reflexes will work, and you will just throw the coal, and your hand will have the burning sensation, right? But this is like normal. This is a common thing. If you put a burning coal, your hand will have a burning sensation. But and if you feel not the burning sensation, some kind of different sensations, like the cold sensation, and so this is like this is an
Altered.
uncommon thing. This is not common, so this is uncommon. And
Yep, good one.
there's one more example that in fever there is dehydration and you feel thirst, but when there is no thirst in fever, so this is an uncommon thing, and we have different remedies for that also.
Right.
So I think also if in one of the classes, for example, we studied the remedy apis, right? And you see a person who's really, really sick, and normally they would be lethargic and tired and perhaps dehydrated, and that would be part of the sickness. But instead, if they're showing signs of bursting energy and really busy and doing a lot of work, yet having a raging fever, then that again falls under the strange, rare, and peculiar. And we really have to put importance in that symptom, because a person having a fever would not generally be excited and busy and working during that time. So you have to understand diseases and how they work in the body, and know what the patient is experiencing, and if that's outside that disease picture, if that is abnormal, and that would be really important when taking a homeopathic case.
Right.
Good point.
Can I add something to that?
Yes, Devera.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm right or wrong. And I don't know where I read this recently, but the strange, rare, and peculiar, the stand is not that weird thing that the person is doing all of a sudden, but it's what the remedy, what is strange, rare, and peculiar to the remedy within the combination of all the symptoms. Does it make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, you're saying the same thing actually.
Am I saying the same thing?
Yeah.
Meaning I don't look in the person don't look for something very strange in that person that's, oh, let's go on this thing because it's peculiar. What's peculiar is that a certain remedy has a certain combination of symptoms, and that is what creates the rare.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Right, just like how we're talking about the same thing, that the combination of modality and sensation and things like that can equate, with the totality of unusual, that symptom picture can in itself be peculiar.
Right.
So maybe what I was reading, the point was not to look for something strange in a person. So maybe they worded it that way so that you
Well,
see
the
what's,
literature under a remedy, it's all proving, right? So at the end of the day, they're all signs and symptoms that provers experienced when they took the remedy. So if we do that and we relate it to what the patient is expressing, we're still looking at signs and symptoms at the end of the day.
correct.
Right, right.
Like maybe
One thing is very important we need to understand. We are working with law of similar. And that what told in aphorism 153. He says, look at the beginning, collective symptom of natural disease. When we are in comparison with collective symptoms of natural disease with list of symptom of medicines. Means if you are looking strange something in the medicine, that actually could be the same in the patient.
sir, I can give some example.
Yeah, right.
So like if the patient comes with the UTI, urinary tract infection, there is frequency of urination, there is burning. This is like the common symptom. And when we have the severe burning throughout the urination, we have this cantharis. But when there is pain at the end of the urination, there is burning at the end of we have this remedy, sarsaparilla. But when there is burning and smarting at the end of the pain, we have this apis mellifica. So the disease is presenting in a different form, and we have the remedies which have these characteristics. So matching the symptoms of the disease and matching the symptoms of the remedy.
If you are able to find the remedy, that means you are able to find the differences in the person. Right? So very important.
Yeah, so you
thing.
brought out the modalities there, Madhu, and that's very important because those are the guides for our prescription, the modalities. So yeah, when there's pain at the beginning of urination versus the middle of urination versus the end of urination, those give us different remedies.
The second part of this aphorism, what teaches us, one part is teaching the very peculiar, striking characteristics and uncommon symptoms. And second half tells us a vague symptoms, a broad symptoms actually are of less importance.
Unless we can qualify them with a modality or something
Which are those
else.
symptoms? Which are those symptoms? Can anybody able to say? Which are those symptoms which demands but less attention?
Tiredness, stomach ache, weakness.
What about
And-
constipation?
Yeah, constipation's really basic. So yeah, you need to know information about that constipation.
How Boriki
You need to
writes
know
this.
what those stools are like, how often the constipation is. You need to know if they're able to go, not able to go, if it helps them to stand, if it helps them to sit, if it helps them to walk around first. You know, it goes on and on and on and on. Yes, Devera.
In
Constipation.
Organon, in Boriki book of 6 Organon, the words used are more general and undefined symptoms. They have list loss of appetite, headache, debility, restlessness, restless sleep, and discomfort, and so forth. They demand but needs less attention. Why? Vague and indefinite character.
But
I also
then,
think symptoms that have 200, 300 remedies listed under that particular rubric really not very helpful.
Exactly.
Oh, but I love those broad rubrics. That's what, those are the mainstay. I love those because
When
then
you
you
are
recombine them and then you add this to
exactly.
it, you add
How do
that
you,
to
for
it.
example, but if you use the rubric head pain, I mean,
Oh,
how do you
then,
use?
well,
Yeah, it's just
if you use head pain, then you need to take right side or left
right.
side or the
Right.
back of the head or back to the front of the head. You need to qualify and quantify everything. Otherwise, it's useless.
Exactly. So I guess that's
And
what I meant by the too broad of a rubric. Really, I don't know what to do with those.
Well, now you know what to do. If it's headache, you want to know if it goes on the right side, if it goes on the left side, if it goes from the back to the front, if it goes from the front to the back. We want to know if it changes sides. We want to know if laying on the right side makes it better. We want to know if laying on the left side makes it better. We want to know if laying on the stomach makes it better. And then we need to, combine all this information to be able to come up with a solution that is going to have that information in the medicine to be able to give to our patient to fix that problem.
yes, Nitish.
Yeah. See, the main thing is, at least if at all we are having a broad rubric, what is its use? Right. So as Tikva ji told that we have to qualify and the quantify, of course, that is the correct portion. If at all we want to repertorize that case and take that rubric into account. Yes, but if we are not going to take that rubric, then what is the use of such a broad rubric which have around 500 to 600 drugs?
Generalized weakness has almost 1200 remedies.
Yeah. And
Generalized weakness.
the main thing is how I use it up, only that I can say. What I do is, if at all I have any confusion in a case, that I am going to prescribe that person supposing pulsatilla. And if at all I see that yes, constitutionally it comes out to be the pulsatilla and all the major symptoms comes and matches. But at least if I find that the person is having the desire for warm food, this desire for warm food is not present in a pulsatilla, but then all the symptoms are present in pulsatilla. So that at least I make it sure that if at all I prescribe the pulsatilla, the case will require some different drug afterwards. And I see it to come true. Just as I told before, when we talk about law of the similia, at least which means that the thing should match like the three angles of a triangle. And it is also said that we can't be matching all the portions. That is the reason if we take use of those rubric in this way, at least it will be the helpful for us. Supposing, for example, a person comes to me and I decide that the drug to be given is a bis nigra. So if I prescribe the bis nigra and I find that the GIT symptoms come on the track, but then the symptoms are as such. This is just like the cutting of the branch of a tree.
Right.
So if I see the broader rubric and I find out that at least those symptoms which I have not taken into account in my prescription, and at least those rubric won't have the bis nigra, which means I have to change my drug.
Yeah, that's an important point. Very, very good point there. Thank you. Does anybody else have a comment on this topic?
We have a couple of people, new people, probably.
Yeah, Nasreen's
San-
here. I haven't seen her at one of these before, and I don't know who this other person is. Hi, Nasreen.
Hi, ma'am. Hi. How are you?
Good. Thank you for joining.
Okay.
Oh, there you are. We love it when people have their cameras on because then when they talk, they show up in our
Francine,
recording. And also it makes you feel like you're not just talking to one person. It's like, you know, that there's humans out there.
Francine,
But
do
I'm
you have
perfectly
anything to
capable of
say?
talking to myself as well, so no problem. Okay. Okay, back to the topic.
Anyone?
Did you want to wrap that up, Sanjay, or do we want to stay here all night, or what do we want to do, huh?
No. Actually, I am asking people if anyone has to say anything.
Yeah, I asked that too.
I just wanted to add that in the beginning or when I joined, sorry, I seem to join a little late.
Yeah.
But this is a great book, The Science of Homeopathy. For the part that we were talking about the electromagnetic waves and the dynamics of homeopathy, it's chapter 5. If anyone has this book, you can have a look over the vital force in disease. I think it speaks really, really well to what we were talking about, the electrons and how they move, and you can get more information in that chapter.
Is it George Vitholkas, I suppose?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
he's gotten very theoretical.
Yes. I mean, this is one of the books that you just have to keep reading over and over again because there's so much information, but definitely goes with what we were discussing earlier in today's session.
Right. Do you have anything to say?
Who, me?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
you.
Oh, I don't, I missed most of it, unfortunately. And I would like you to send me actually the link so I could listen from the
Yeah.
beginning.
Okay,
Tikva, go with the closing note.
Okay, well, aphorisms 5 and 6 are the gateway to the disease, where we can compare the person as they are before they got sick to the best of our ability. And then we qualify the symptoms and try to pick out what's characteristic and unusual in order to compare that to the most similar medicine we can find. It goes something like that.
And we actually thankful for everyone who has attended this session. There is lot and lot we can talk about, but somewhere we have to put and full stop. So unfortunately, we have to stop somewhere. So otherwise, Organon or this homeopathy is a topic, never-ending subject.
Yeah, it's a never-ending subject that we could just go on and on and on and on and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. Right, guys?
Absolutely.
Homeopathy party.
Yeah.
Yep, Devera's talking to us on Sunday with a screen and a picture. Homeopathy party.
Yes. We're going to make homeopathy great again.
That's right. We need to make homeopathy great again.
Yeah.
Or a great
Thank you.
morning, a great.
I think
Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. It's Francine. I'm so
Oh, hi,
sorry.
Francine.
But I'm actually driving, and I got lost in the back roads of Jerusalem, trying to get to Harnof. So I was listening, but thank you very much for being here tonight.
Well, thank you, Francine, for joining us. We really appreciate it. And help us make homeopathy great again.
It's always been great.
Well, greater.
That's actually Francine's slogan. She stole it from Donald Trump.
Uh-huh.
But Devera ran with it.
Yeah,
I
and
might
it's
have
a good
stolen
one.
it, but she ran with it.
And it's a good one.